Are we good? Are we live?
Not yet.
Yeah, let me know so I can begin. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك وعلى أهل بيتك الطيبين الطاهرين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي وابن مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء. فاز من اعتصم بكم أمن من لجأ إلى حصنكم. يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن إبراهيم كان أمة قانتا لله حنيفا ولم يك من المشركين. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآله وبلغ رسوله. We began, for those that were in attendance, with Ziyaratu Warith. Who here knows Ziyaratu Warith off the top of their heart? MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Inshallah, more and more. It's not very difficult to remember, and it's rather short. So inshallah, we should remember it. Especially that it is authenticated, and it is narrated from our Imam al-Sadiq, alayhi salam. Allahumma salli. Ziyaratu Warith begins with, it's actually right here. Assalamu alayka ya waritha Adam صفوة السلام عليك يا وارث نوح نبي الله. السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. And we spoke on the first day, we spoke about the concept of mirath, of inheritor. What does it mean? We spoke about Adam and we spoke about Nuh alayhim as-salam. Today we will focus on Nabiyullah Ibrahim, Khalilullah. What does Khalil mean? Khalil means beloved, not Habib. Khalil. It is more than just Habib. Okay? So an endearing love is a Khalil. When we refer to the Quran says, Inna Ibrahim, verily Ibrahim was a nation. That should give us pause. How could a man be a nation? A man, he was described by himself as a nation. Now we need to understand our prophets in order for us to understand our imams. Because while the Ziyaratu Warith is specific to Imam al-Hussein, all of the imams are the warithin of the Anbiya. In fact, the scholars are the warithin of the Anbiya. Remember the first day we said there's two types of inheritance, vertical and horizontal. Vertical is son from father and grandson from father, right? Son from father as we go down the line. Horizontal is like what? Like a student who inherits the knowledge of his teacher. Their vertical one gets lost through time. We said if you have 5 brothers and your father gave you as inheritance gold, you only get a small portion of that gold. But if a scholar had 5 students, they don't each get a small portion. They get all of the knowledge. And they in turn inherit all of the knowledge to the oncoming generations. So therefore, we must understand our prophets to see what the Ahlul Bayt inherited. When we come to this verse in Surah An-Nahl, chapter 16, verses 120 to 123, it reads as follows. Verily, Ibrahim was a nation obedient to Allah. Hanifa. What does Hanifa mean? We hear this a lot. Ibrahim al-Hanif, correct? Millata Ibrahim Hanif. Hanif means monotheist, meaning that he only worshipped one God. That is called Hanafi. Okay? Means that he only worshipped one God. Now we're going to focus on this verse. So today we might run a little late, but it's important for us to focus on these verses. Verily, Ibrahim was a nation obedient to Allah, Hanifan, and he was not a mushrik, and he was not a polytheist. Monotheist meaning mono meaning one, poly meaning many. Monotheist meaning believe in one, polytheist meaning believe in many. Thankful for his bounties, thankful for his Lord's bounties. He chose him, meaning his Lord chose him and guided him onto a straight path. And afterwards we inspired you, and we gave him good in this world, hasana, and in the hereafter he is amongst the righteous. And afterwards we inspired you, O Muhammad, we inspired you, follow the way of Ibrahim, Hanifan. What did we say Hanifan means? Believe in one God. And he was not from the disbelievers. Now, this verse gives us 5 attributes to Ibrahim. The first is that Ibrahim was a nation. Ibrahim was a nation. We can take this understanding from 3 points of view. Number 1 is that Ibrahim was the only monotheist in his time. Ibrahim was raised by his uncle Azar. Okay? His uncle Azar. By the way, if someone says to you, but the Quran says, وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ لِأَبِيهِ Azar. Ab does not mean father. Ab means, the actual term does mean father, but it does not mean the one who gave you birth. Your uncle could be called father. Okay? It's like saying Baba. Okay? It doesn't necessarily mean Walid, your biological father. Okay? It could be your uncle, it could be your biological father, or it could be your teacher, your Islamic, your religious teacher, your mentor, your religious mentor. He is also referred to as Ab. Why? Because he takes on the role of upbringing. That's why he's called Ab. Is that clear? So, Ibrahim was a monotheist in a nation of polytheism. Ibrahim was raised by his uncle Azar. His uncle Azar's job was what? He would create idols and sell them. When Ibrahim was a youth, Azar wanted to make Ibrahim sell the idols. Ibrahim refused. He forced him. So what did Ibrahim say? Ibrahim would take the idol and he would tell people, whoever wants to buy something that doesn't benefit them nor harm them, come and buy this piece of wood. So the people became angry. They went to Ibrahim. They went to Azar. They said, Azar, what is this kid saying? He's mocking our gods. Azar told Ibrahim, he said, Ibrahim, stop doing that. Next day, Ibrahim says, whoever wants to buy a piece of wood that has no benefit, no harm, come and buy this piece of wood. Until we know the story full well, where Azar kicks him out of the house and tells him, if you do not leave me, I shall stone you to death. Ibrahim leaves him and he says, I shall pray to my Lord for you, for my Lord has been kind unto me. O my Abi, O my uncle, O my Ab, why do you worship that which does not benefit you nor harm you? Was Ibrahim done? Ibrahim then goes. They had a celebration. They say there was a celebration once a year where everybody would leave the city to celebrate and then return in the evening. On that day, Ibrahim takes an axe to their temple of worship where they had all of their idols, and he broke each single idol with the axe, except for the biggest one. Okay? And he put the axe around the neck of the biggest one. When the people came back, where did they come back? They're celebrating. They came back to their temple. When they came back to their temple, they saw that all of their idols are broken except for the big one. They said, who did this? Someone said, we know that Ibrahim remained behind. He doesn't join our celebrations. So they went and they questioned him. They said, why did you break the idols? He says, who said it was me? It was the oldest one. They said, how could it be the oldest one? He's like, well, the tool that was used to destroy is still with him, right? The gun that was used for the crime is still with him. The evidence are in his hands. They said, Ya Ibrahim, you know that they cannot speak. You know that they cannot move. He said to them, question him. They said to him, you know he cannot speak. You know he cannot move. So Ibrahim says to them, if he can't speak and he can't move, how can you ask him to benefit you? If he can't benefit himself, how could he benefit you? What did they say? They said, this is the straw that broke the camel's back. We can't tolerate you anymore. So they imprisoned him for 6 months. For 6 months, they would gather wood, and then they lit up a blaze. Imagine 6 months worth of wood. I don't know how much it was, but it was 6 months according to the narrations. They could not walk close to the fire. So what did they do? They put Ibrahim in a catapult. You guys know what a catapult is, right? In a catapult. No, I don't think it was a catapult. It was, what do they call it? And there's the other one, the one with the pendulums, swinging pendulum. Nonetheless, we'll say a catapult. And they tossed him into the fire. Ibrahim was known as what we said, Khalilullah. How did he achieve this? By having absolute submission to Allah as well. While he's in the midst, while he's in the air, the angels came to him, Israfil, Mikael, Jibra'il. They say when Jibra'il came to him, he says, oh Ibrahim, do you have a request? You know, this isn't, son, this is like, you're on your way to death. Do you have a request? Allah can stop it if you want. What did Ibrahim say to him? He said, Ya Jibra'il, amma minka fala. From you I have no request. You're created. You can't do anything for me if Allah doesn't will it. From you I have no request. As for my Lord, فَعِلْمُهُ بِحَالِي يُغْنِي عَنْ سُؤَالِي. His knowledge of my situation means that I don't need to ask. What does Allah want to do with me? What is Allah's will? If Allah wants me to die, so be it. If Allah wants to save me, so be it. His knowledge of my situation means that I don't need to ask for anything. I know He has knowledge of my situation. What ends up happening? قُلْنَا يَا نَارْ كُونِي بَرْدًا وَسَلَامًا. Because he submitted, Allah made the fire that they had set ablaze, what? Cold and peaceful. Why cold and peaceful? Imam, in the narration, one of the Imams, I believe it was Imam Sadiq, and the gist of the narration, he said that when the word came out as Kuni Bardan, Ibrahim could have died from the cold. That's why it was followed by salam and peace. Cold and peaceful, not just cold, because cold could kill you, right? But it was cold and peaceful. In this world, Ibrahim was the only monotheist. Therefore, he himself represented the nation of Allah, the nation of theology. That's one point. The second point, he was the source of the ummah of Tawheed. What does the Quran say? And afterwards we inspired you, O Muhammad, follow the way of Ibrahim, Hanifan, monotheist. And he was not one of the mushrikeen. ثم أوحينا إليك أن اتبع ملة إبراهيم حنيفا وما كان من المشركين. He was not one of the mushrikeen, meaning polytheists. The third point is that Ibrahim, he embodied the best and all the greatest of qualities of a nation. What are some of the best qualities of a nation? Speak up, I want to hear your voices. Someone give me an answer. What's a good quality within a nation? patience, perseverance, determination, piety, humbleness. What else? Give me examples. You guys are sleeping? Are you guys with me? Bravery. Come on. Peace. Equality. Equity. Unity. All of these qualities were within Ibrahim. All of these qualities were within Ibrahim. Likewise, they were within Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. And likewise, they were inherited by Amir al-Mu'mineen, and Imam al-Hasan, and Imam al-Hussein, and Imam al-Sajjad, and everybody until the final Imam, until Imam al-Mahdi. All of them inherited those qualities. Therefore, one can argue to say that each one of them is a nation on their own. When Imam al-Hussein stood in the battle of Karbala, he represented a nation by himself. He represented the bravery of a nation. He represented the piety of a nation, not just an individual. The second attribute is obedience. The second attribute is obedience. Indeed, Ibrahim was a nation obedient to Allah. That obedience is where do we see, where can we view this obedience? Give me a story that shows Ibrahim's submission and obedience to Allah. We said that on his way into the fire, he was what? He didn't question Allah, right? He said his knowledge of my situation is enough. How about when it was revealed to him that he must sacrifice his son? Did he doubt it? Did he question it? Did he say, "Oh my Lord, this is my son"? What did he say? He said, "Oh my son, I saw that I am sacrificing you. I have been inspired." Inspiration means iha, yuha. Okay? However, once it comes in the form of Jibreel, another time it comes in form of inspiration of the heart for the prophets. Another time it comes in the form of ru'ya, not a dream. Ru'ya, there is a difference. Dreams are works of your brain, of your mind. Ru'ya are revelations from Allah. Okay? He says, "Inni ara," I see that I am sacrificing you. He told his son. Who was that son? Ismail. Okay? What does Ismail say? He says, "Ya abati fa'al ma tu'mar, satajiduni insha'Allah." You will find me, oh my father, do what you have been commanded. You will find me, insha'Allah, obedient. Obedient. Brothers and sisters, can you imagine who here has a son? Is there anything that you love more in this world than your offsprings? No, in all honesty. There's nothing that is dearer to you and closer to you that gives you hope in this world than your children. Ibrahim had Ismail after what? After long and hardship, he had Ismail. And now Allah wants to test him. So Allah tells him, sacrifice your son. What does Ibrahim say? Let's do it. What does Ismail say? Let's do it. You've been commanded. Can you see the level of obedience? Blind obedience. I'm not saying that you should have blind obedience and go, based on a dream, go kill somebody. Astaghfirullah. That's not what I'm saying. You're not a prophet, okay? Don't go do anything foolish thinking that you've been commanded to do it. No. Do what you have been told to do. Do your salat, do your siyam, refrain from haram, do your wajib, okay? And study your faith and be good to the people in your world. The people around you. Either your brother or in faith or your equal in humanity. So don't take these stories as inspirations for you to start acting upon your dreams. Just like how some people, they have a dream and all of a sudden they think they've been struck with the devil and they've been possessed and they have to go do this and none of that accounts for here. However, Ibrahim is a prophet, and a prophet's ru'ya is taklif for him, wajib upon him. Where else do we see the example of obedience? There was a man that stood in a land between Nawawis and Karbala. Between Nawawis and Karbala. And every time one of his sons was killed, what did he say? Ilahi in kana hada yurdik, fakhudh ilayka hatta tarda. Oh my Lord, if this pleases you, take to you until you are pleased. Who was this man? Al-Husayn ibn Ali, sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Take, what do you need, oh my Lord? Take until you are pleased. On the other hand, we have the wife of Ibrahim, Hajar. Hajar had her newborn on her arms. And she was being dragged by Ibrahim, as the Quran says, to a valley without trees, or without zar, or without plants. And he left her there and walked away. The narration says she started running after him, saying, Ibrahim, why are you leaving us here? Ibrahim, why do you leave us here? He did not answer her. She said, Ibrahim, is this from you or from Allah? He looked, he says, no, it is from Allah. She submitted. She submitted. As long as it's from Allah, He's the savior, He's the protector. Leave. However, in Karbala, we had a woman that didn't even question. In Karbala, we had a woman that tripped over the body of her own son, Aoun, and she walked past him to go to her Mawla, Al-Imam Al-Husayn. Zainab alayha salam didn't question. Zainab alayha salam did not ask Hussein, why are we going to Karbala? Is this from your own decision or were you commanded to do so by the Prophet? They say when Imam al-Abbas came to her, he said to her, Zainab, get ready. She says, what for? He says, Zainab, Al-Hussein wants to go to Karbala, to Iraq. She says, okay, but who will be my protector? Who will be the one that I lean on? Al-Abbas said, Zainab, is that a question you ask while I am available? You ask such a question while I draw breath. Of course I'm the one that's going to serve you. She stood up and walked out. On the night of Karbala, she came to the Imam and she said to him, Ya akhi, ya Hussein, oh my Imam, have you tested your men? She didn't say to him, why don't we go back home? She said, have you tested your men? Do you know what they're made of? Are you worried that they might backstab you tomorrow? He said, yes, I have tested them. And I have found that they enjoy death by my side more than a child enjoys the milk from his mother. These are the companions of Imam al-Hussein. Tonight is the night of Hur al-Riyahi. Tonight is the night when our brothers celebrate, and when I say celebrate, I mean commemorate, sorry. Not celebrate, commemorate. Al-Hur al-Riyahi. A man who was true to himself. A man who was true to himself. Al-Hur al-Riyahi, you know what, let's continue the bahth and then we'll talk about Al-Hur so that we can fulfill the bahth, unless you want to talk about Hur and we can leave the bahth for tomorrow. Because we only have 15 minutes and Al-Hur story is pretty long. Al-Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi was a renowned general in the army in Kufa. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The second one for Imam al-Hasan and Hussein. The third one for the Imam al-Hujjah and to hasten his reappearance. Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-sharif. Al-Hurr al-Riyahi was a renowned general in the army of Kufa. Not only that, he was the head of his tribe. Al-Hurr al-Riyahi was approached by Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, who was the governor of Kufa, and told, your job is to go meet up with Hussein and not let Hussein reach Kufa. As Al-Hurr was preparing his soldiers, his army, which was 1,000 men, and as he was about to leave Kufa, he said, I heard a voice saying, Hani'an laka ya Hurr. Congratulations, Hurr, for the Shahada, for the Jannah. So he thought to himself, he said, Wayh al-Hurr, how dare the Hurr. He's going to face the grandson of the Prophet while he is being told that you will reach heaven. How will I reach heaven? Al-Hurr, Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayh, met up with the Imam in a place called Jabal Dhi Hasm, a place in Iraq just before Karbala. By the time Al-Hurr and his army arrived, they were famished from thirst and heat. Al-Imam al-Hussein commanded that his army be quenched and that the horses not just be quenched, but rather they be showered with water to cool them down. This same Imam Hussein, who in 4 days will no longer have a drop of water. They spoke together, Al-Hurr and Imam al-Hussein. Imam al-Hussein said to him, what do you want here? He says, I was not sent to fight you. I was sent to restrain you, to stop you from moving. The Imam insisted on leaving. The Hurr stood in his way. The Imam looked at Al-Hurr and he says, Thakalatka ummuk. What do you want? Thakalatka ummuk means may your mother mourn your death. What do you want from me? They say Al-Hurr looked at Imam al-Hussein and he says, Ya Aba Abdullah, law kanat wallahi, or Ya Aba Abdullah, if anyone other than you would have said this, I would have not left cursing his mother. But how do I curse your mother when your mother is Fatima to Zahra? I can't curse you. I can't curse your mother. You want to talk about me and my mother? By all means. But your mother is Fatima. Who is my mother compared to your mother, Ya Aba Abdullah? Al-Hurr accompanied Imam al-Hussein until they got to a land. When they got to a land, the Imam slept for a few moments. He drowsed off on the back of his horse. Then he woke up and he says, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We are to Allah and to Him we shall return. The man next to him was his son Ali al-Akbar. He says, Ya Abba, why did you istirja'? Why did you do this istirja'? It's called istirja' in Arabic. He says, Oh Bunay, I passed out for a second. I dozed off. And I heard a caller call, Al-Qawm yasirun wal-manaya tasiru wara'uhum. The people are marching and death is marching behind them. Ali al-Akbar looks to his father and he says, Abba, awalasna ala al-haq. Are we not on the right path? The Imam says, Bala ya Bunay. He says, Abba, then I do not mind whether we fall onto death or death falls onto us. Whether we meet death or death meets us, it's irrelevant. We are on the right path. Then he looks at his companions and he says, what land is this? A man says to him, this is Nainawa. He says, does it have another name? Another man says, this is Nawawis. He says, is there another name? A man says to him, this is Karbala. The Imam stopped and said, Bala, Bala, Ardu Karbin wa Bala. Karb means hardship. Bala means test. Karbala means the land of hardship and test. He says, Bala, Bala, ardu karbin wa bala. This is where we put down our luggage. This is where we will face our enemy. This is where we will shed our blood. They stopped. All of a sudden, they are surrounded, according to the least of estimates, 5,000 men. Some narrations say more. Why more? Could it be possible? Actually, in my opinion, 5,000 is a very small number. Because only the individuals imprisoned in Kufa were 10,000 from the Shia. And the Shia were the minority in Kufa. They were not the majority. Not only that, Yazid and Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad called an outlaw whoever did not stand to fight against Imam Hussein. Meaning what? What does the word outlaw mean? Means that they have no protection from the government. Meaning that anybody could rob them, kill them, and there is no protection. Wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah. Therefore, surrounded by these enemies, Al-Imam al-Hussein looks at the land all of a sudden being filled with sawad, with darkness, with blackness from the troops. And they stand between him and the water. Remember, it was but a few days ago that he expensed all his water, that he spent all his water where? Upon the men and the horses of the same individuals who will tomorrow kill him. Al-Hurr stands there looking at everybody. Imam Hussein is pleading onto them, saying, you called me here. I didn't come here by my own will. You wanted me here. If you do not want me, allow me to leave, return. They said no. He says, if you don't want me to return, let me go to a different land. They said no. He says, what do you want? They say to him, we want you to swear allegiance to Yazid. He says, that I cannot do. Wallahi la u'tikum biyadi i'ta' al-dhalil wa la afirru firar al-abid. I will not submit to you like someone that is demeaned, nor will I run away from you like a slave running from his master. If it comes to death, al-maut awla min al-'ari. Death is better than disgrace. Wal-'ar awla min al-nari. And disgrace is better than hellfire. I would rather die before being disgraced, and disgraced before going to hell. Meaning what? Meaning that you will be disgraced and you will go to hell as the enemy of Hussein. Hurr is watching this. He goes to Umar ibn Sa'd, the army of the commander of the army. Remember, Hurr was one of the generals. Okay, Umar was the commander of the whole army. He goes to him and he says, Ya Umar, are you really going to fight this man? He says, yes, a fight the least of which heads will roll and limbs will fall. He says, Ya Umar, what about the resolutions he gave you? He says, if it were up to me, I would take one of them. But Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad refuses, so we will kill him. Let's do a small comparison between Hurr al-Riyahi and Umar ibn Sa'd. Umar ibn Sa'd knew Imam Hussein from when he was a child. In one narration it says that the Prophet ﷺ was walking and Imam Hussein was on his shoulder. He was carrying him on his shoulder. So Umar said hello to Imam al-Hussein. The Prophet looks at Umar ibn Sa'd and he says, Ya Umar, do you like Hussein? He says, Bala ya Rasulullah. He says, Ya Umar, then what will you do on the day when you will command an army to kill him? Imam Hussein calls Umar ibn Sa'd and he says to him, Ya Umar, why do you want to fight me? He says, Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, the Imam says to him, Umar, why do you fight me? Is it for money? We will give you money. For land, we will give you land. For protection, we will give you protection. Umar says, I fear that they might destroy my house. The Imam says, I will build you a house. He says, I fear that they might take my wealth. The Imam says, we will give you wealth. I fear that they will seize my land. The Imam says, we will give you land. He left no excuse for him. Then he says, I fear that they might kill my daughters and my sons. The Imam here stood up. He says, you fear for your daughters and your sons, but the daughters and the sons of Muhammad mean nothing to you? And he left. However, Hur, when he saw the people surrounding Hussein alayhi salam, the narration says that Hur was standing next to a man by the name of Al-Muhajir ibn Aus. Al-Muhajir ibn Aus knows Hur from Al-Kufa, and he knows his renown and his bravery. He saw Hur start inching his horse towards the camp of Imam Hussein. Al-Muhajir came to him and he said to him, what do you want to do? You want to charge? Let's charge. He said, all of a sudden I noticed Hur start shaking and shivering. So he looked at him and he said, Hur, what do I see? What is this situation that you're in? He thought Hur was afraid. He said, Hur, if I was asked who was the bravest in Kufa, I would not say anyone other than you. What do I see here? Hur turns to him and he says, Wayhak, inni ukhayyiru nafsi bayna al-jannati wal-nar. I am fighting with myself between heaven and hell. فوالله لا أختار على الجنة شيئا. By Allah, I will not choose anything over heaven. Then he kicks his horse and gallops towards the camp of Imam al-Hussein. Before he got there, they say he put his hands on his head and he started screaming, Oh Allah, I beg your mercy, for I have brought fear into the hearts of the daughters of your Prophet. Oh Allah, ilayka unib, to you I complain and to you I ask forgiveness. Ya Aba Abdullah, can I be forgiven? The Imam says to him, yes, if you ask for your forgiveness, you shall be forgiven. He came down and he says, Ya Aba Abdullah, allow me to advise the people. He went to them to advise them. What did they do? They shot him with arrows. But Hur didn't fight, he retreated. In fact, when we read the maqtal of Imam al-Hussein and his ashab, we see that every time one of the companions advises them, they shoot them down with arrows. And they retreat. The ashab retreat. Why? Because Imam Hussein says, no one is allowed to start fighting. Let them be the ones that begin the bloodshed. Then, when the battle began, when Umar ibn Sa'd, when the armies faced, Umar ibn Sa'd was the first one to put his arrow and shoot towards Imam Hussein. And he says, I want you guys to be witness in front of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad that I am the one that started the fight, thinking that he's going to receive something. Remember, we're still comparing between who? Umar ibn Sa'd and Al-Hurr al-Riyahi. Al-Hurr came to the Imam and he said, Yabna Rasulullah, I am the first one that came out to face you. I am the one that derived you from your path. I am the one that brought you to this land. Wallah, I had no knowledge that this was their intention. I thought that they would take your plea. Therefore, allow me to be the first one that dies before you. And then he rode into battle. When he rode into battle, he read, Inni ana al-hurr wa ma'wa ad-dayfi. Indeed, I am hurr and I take in the visitors. I'm an honorable man. أضرب في أعناقكم بالسيف. I strike your necks with my sword, your throats with my sword. عن خير من حل بأرض الخيف. In defense of the best who entered this valley. They charged against him. He kept on fighting them until they surrounded him and they brought him down. When they brought him down, When they brought him down, he, salamullahi alayhi, was carried by the companions of the Imam. The Imam had created a little tent for the injured and the dying. When he went there, Imam al-Hussein came to him crying, wiping the sand and the blood from his face, and he says, "You are free. Anta hur." Hur means free. He says, "You are free, just like your mother had named you, and you will be happy and joyous in the hereafter." Hur was truly hur. He was truly free. How free was he? He was free that when he saw right and wrong, he chose the right path, even though it did not benefit him. Brothers and sisters, what is freedom? Freedom is not doing what you want, when you want, how you want. That's not freedom. Freedom is doing the right thing even if it doesn't benefit you. It's being on the right path even if it doesn't serve you. It's standing with right even if there is harm to you. Imam al-Hussein is free. Therefore, he said, or as the poet says, if the faith of Muhammad does not stand unless through my sacrifice, فَيَا سُيُوفْ خُذِينِي, O swords, take me. That is a man who is truly hur. On the other hand, Umar ibn Sa'd. Umar ibn Sa'd says, أَأَتْرُكُ مُلْكُ الرَّيِّ وَالرَّيُّ مُنْيَتِي. Yazid promised me that I would take the province of Ray in Iran. Oh, and how I dream of Ray. أَمْ أَعُودُ مَأْثُومًا بِقَتْلِ حُسَيْنِ. Or do I return with the sin of the death of Hussein? Hussein ibn Ammi. Hussein is one of my cousins. And there is a lot between us. However, Ray, there is qurratu ayni. There, the sparkle, the twinkle within my eye is Ray. Is the province of Ray. They claim that Allah has created heaven and hell and tormentation. If they are true, I shall seek forgiveness within 2 years. And if they're not true, then I have benefited in this world. This is Umar ibn Sa'd. Umar ibn Sa'd is the one that stood in front of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. And he said, "Imla rikabi faddatan aw dhahaba." Fill up to my knees with silver and gold, for I have killed the best individual. And the best individual, when you want to measure him from mother and father. Ubaydullah became infuriated. He says, if you knew he was the best individual, why did you kill him? Get out, you get nothing. He walked out, him and his son, and he says, doing this. He says, "Bunay khasirna dunya wal akhirah." We have nothing, we gain nothing in this life or in the next life. Al-Hur, as he was dying, he was struck on his forehead, and the blood was gushing onto his face. They say Imam al-Hussein took out a piece of cloth and wrapped his head, and he died next to Imam al-Hussein. However, Umar ibn Sa'd died in his underwear on the back of a horse as he was fleeing from al-Mukhtar al-Thaqafi. Brothers and sisters, this is the difference between free men and slaves. Sometimes we are free men because of the choices we make, and sometimes we are slaves to the choices we make. Imam al-Hussein inherited the prophets through his freedom, through his choice, through his ideology, through his methodology, through his determination and patience. Therefore, when we sit here 1400 years later and we say, "Labbayka ya Hussein," what are we saying? Are we truly on the path of Hussein? Are we like the Hur? You see, subhanAllah, until today, Hur is buried separate. Hur is buried a few kilometers away from the Imam. They say he's buried that way because, as I said, he is the head of his tribe. So what happened was, his tribe came and they said, no, you can cut all the heads off, but the head of our leader you can't touch. Hur is the only one whose body is still intact. The rest of the companions and the Ahlul Bayt were beheaded. And his tribe took him, to where they lived, and that's where they buried him. They say when Zaynab saw this, she began to wail. She says everyone that has a tribe came and took their fallen, except for the one who has no tribe left. Brothers and sisters, let's not forget that most of Bani Hashim were killed on that day. Most of Bani Ali ibn Abi Talib were killed on that day. Most of Bani Abdul Muttalib were killed on that day. That's why Imam Zainul Abidin, he says, Wallahi ma marartu ala duri ali aqil illa wa khanaqatni al-abra. He says, by Allah, I have never walked by the houses of the sons of Aqil ibn Abdul Muttalib unless I choked with my own tears. Why? Because there were no men left in there. There were no men left. There were no more than women crying and wailing. I say, Sayyidi, what about the door of Hussein? What about the door of Zaynab? What about the houses of Ali ibn Abi Talib? Therefore, brothers and sisters, when we sit here and we commemorate, we have to commemorate not just emotionally, but ideologically. I ask Allah بحق الحسين الوجيه وجده وأبيه وأمه وأخيه والتسعة المعصومين من بنيه, that He may hasten the appearance of our Imam. Ya Hujjat Allah, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, we're tired, we have grown tired of waiting. Ya Hujjat Allah, we see all of our enemies surrounding us and very few who are with us, who are supporting us. We ask that Allah hastens your reappearance so that the world is enlightened by it, so that the world is united by your light, so that the inheritance of the prophets is fulfilled. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات وأرواح من مات على الهدى والإيمان رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة مسبوقة بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. Brothers and sisters, before we recite the Fatiha, I received multiple calls from Najaf and from Canada and other places. We have a lot of brothers and sisters that are sick. Please remember them. Ask Allah bihaq Ali al-Karbala, bihaq the one who was sick during Karbala, to cure our ill and to hasten the reappearance of our Imam. Barakallahu bikum jami'an. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم الحمد لله رب العالمين. يا الله.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. शम्मा से शम्मा जले सिलसिला जारी रहे, हम रहे या न रहे ये आज़ादारी रहे. शम्मा से शम्मा जले सिलसिला जारी रहे, हम रहे या न रहे ये आज़ादारी रहे. शम्मा से शम्मा अपनी नस्लों को सिखाते रहो मातम का हुनर, सीना दर सीना करे बस ये आज़ादारी सफ़र. जैसे हालात भी हो जिस्म ये जारी रहे, हम रहे या ना रहे یہ عزاداری رہے. شمع سے شمع جلے سلسلہ جاری رہے. ہم رہے یا نہ رہے یہ عزاداری رہے. شمع سے شمع لاکھ بدلے یہ زمانے کی روش اور موسم, ایک پل بھی نہ رکے اشک ازا اور ماتم. ماتم شہ کا جنوں ذہن پر طاری رہے. ہم رہے یا نہ رہے یہ عزاداری رہے. شمع سے شمع جلے سلسلہ جاری رہے. ہم رہے یا نہ رہے یہ عزاداری رہے. شمع سے شمع یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین پر محمد والی محمد صلوات اللہ.
Anybody know how to recite ziyarat? Maybe you should put in your telephone, so you can recite short ziyarat, like, very short one. You can copy from Arabic or from other English languages, So you should have at least have ziyarat in your phone, okay? Inshallah. So tomorrow somebody in your group will recite